very few women start a business in Pakistan, and those who do so often do so out of necessity or some majboori basically. And rather than looking for an opportunity in the market and trying to start something to address that gap or opportunity. So the guests that we have today, all of them are entrepreneurs. So they can speak directly to the theme that we have, or what we are all here today to do, celebrate the spirit of entrepreneurship amongst Pakistani women. But what they are also in a very important and I think critical position to do is to influence in the public space. So they are influencers in terms of their presence in the media. So that means they also have a role in terms of shifting mindsets and changing attitudes in society. So in today's discussion, we try and engage on both sides of the conversations, on their experiences as entrepreneurs, but also as influencers of change through their position in a media house or as a public personality. So let me start with you, Momina. And one of the questions when people heard that you were going to be here today, what I was told I must ask you is about the portrayal of women in the media today, especially in terms of the entertainment industry. And the idea is that most people feel that media tends to portray Pakistani women as victims. And while that is true, women in Pakistan are an oppressed and marginalized segment, but we know today, as we see in this room, there are also stories of success and there are stories of breaking barriers. So my question to you is that do you think there is sufficient space in the media today to highlight those stories and to portray the positive side of being a woman in Pakistan? You can just turn on your mic there.
First of all, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me here. The answer to your question is, unless you show a victim, you cannot show a solution. And unfortunately, the audience is what drives the content that the channels would like to produce, because that is the way to get the eyes. So, this is what I keep telling people, like for us, like for producers like myself who believe in what she said, is that, just the victim side of the woman should not be shown on the television, and the survivor and the people who achieve something should also be a part of the programming. I tell everyone that this is a jihad that we do every day, because in a program where it has to be commercially successful, and our audience hai hamari, they want to see the roti dhoti woman and the victim, and because maybe most of them, they relate to them. So what we've done is that, at least what I do in my serials and the concepts that I design is that if there is a victim, there should be a solution to that also. And mostly women would feel, in this country at least, that they are victims of something or the other. The working woman ki aur victimization hai, housewife ki aur victimization hai jo hote hain. But it's not about victimization, it's all about the solution, and it's all about what the route that you take after the victimization. So victimization on screens just for the sake of TRPs is wrong. But if you show a victim and then you show a solution, that is what you need. And there is space for that. And my first project actually, when I started doing television, was for a brand called Fair and Lovely, and that time, Fair and Lovely really wanted to change their brand positioning from just a cream that is going to make girls fair and get them a good rishta. They wanted, to associate Fair and Lovely with women who stand against all odds and then become something. So the first ever project that I took, and that's actually my start of the career as to why this field attracted me, was Fair and Lovely Kismat Ke Sitare. And we did 3 seasons for Fair and Lovely, and it was all about real women who were victims of one kind or the other, and then the way they against all hurdles became somebody's. And by somebody's, we really don't mean the high ups in the corporate sector or all, but who've changed their destiny to be someone's who they can be proud of. So yes, there is a lot of space there. And Murari, the recent serial that we did, Sammi, DFID was also involved in Sammi actually. So so thank you to the donors who help us work on such projects. But then, you know, like Udari, if you look at Udari, it was all about victimization also. It was about child rape and the way the women are treated, lower workforce women in the society, and about the musician women, jinka jo hai to, who are not considered to be respectful professions in this country. So they were all victims. But Udari was not a play that was endorsing victimization. So on TV we should not be endorsing victimization, we should be giving solutions for victimization.
So just picking up on some of the things you said, Sidra, what is your view on this? You know, Momina mentioned that, you know, to make something commercially viable, we need to show that the sort of the negative side, but then as long as we can couple it with the positive, we can change. So what is your experience been? Are you seeing some shift in the media in terms of embracing women's success or achievements?
Well, thank you so much for that question, and I think I want to go back to how you introduced me, wearing different hats, right? So if I wear the hat of a viewer, and if I just from that standpoint, look at media, I can see why people have so many reservations. They see us to be promoting those stereotypes where a woman is only concerned about her looks and when would she get married. A good-looking man in Pakistani dramas never marries once. The mother-in-law is always conniving. I see where all of this is coming from. But if I go back and if I look at what media has done for women, I think there's a huge positive role that they have played. In fact, I would go as far as calling them the original incubators and accelerator for women entrepreneurs. I mean, if you look at it, every woman who's right now in media has been extremely empowered by the power that has been vested through media in her. You see women sitting across politicians, across policymakers, and actually asking them tough questions. They are out there making a public image for themselves and using it for the larger good of society. I mean, you see 3 examples here, but I can tell you, every woman who's a public figure, thanks to media, be it be an actor, a singer, even a sport actress, she started something on the line. She knows how to convert that dividend of attention that she gets through media into something of value for the society via businesses. They're running their own salons, they're trying to create creations, they know that they're a force in fashion to reckon with. So I see that to be a positive side. But coming to the other side of it, I think the medium of storytelling is extremely powerful. And there is there was recently a concept I was kind of grappling over, and it mentions how weaponizing victimhood is a dangerous trend. What happens is when you look at society, there are times when you look at a certain issue, and instead of the victim, you pick up the false victim and tell them that you're the one who are actually being victimized here. A good example would be the Me Too movement. There's a certain segment of society and a certain president who's orange in color, who's turned around and said that it's a him too movement that we need to look at. So he's turned the real victims to be sidelined and changed the pivot altogether. I feel media right now is like a hologram card, tilted a bit, it's a smile, tilted a little bit more, and it's a frown. So it's really how you're looking at it and how you're going to use it. It's a powerful medium, so let's use it for the good.
And I think, Nadia, you are one of the sort of persons who's benefited, and Sidra was referring to, who's used her position and visibility and stature in the media industry to start something of her own. So the question I have for you is, one would think it would be very easy for you to start a business, given that you have platform and you have visibility. Was the experience different from what you expected once you started your business and tried to make it work?
Firstly, of course, thank you very much for having me here. Definitely, it was very, very different. I mean, from the I'm not a business person at all. I'm a medical, person. I'm a qualified dentist, so I have absolutely no clue about business and how to run a business and what all should be the parameters of any business, like nothing whatsoever. So it basically just started off with me having been in the industry for quite a while. It's been almost 18 years, and since I started 4 years ago, I had quite a long journey of being in the industry, and I did realize that I don't want to, and I cannot count on being only in media to keep giving me the kind of sustenance that I require or that I want, So I was always the type who never wanted to be dependent on somebody to give me work. I always was the type who wanted to just, work at her own women fancy. So that's when I decided to, start the salon. But yes, of course, the fact that being in media had already given me quite a lot of capital, which I had wisely saved as well, and kind of planned, not that it was planned that I would open a salon, but I had the savings, so I was not frivolous in my spendings and all of that. And that was also thanks to my husband, who did tell me that, hello, whatever that you're doing, I don't want your money, but I think you should be saving as well. So so when I started the salon, it was, I would say 70% my own investment, and 30% was just a little bit of the extra that was required, and that came from my husband actually. So but it was extremely difficult. I mean, initially I was writing checks myself, and I was like, it was completely unprofessional, where I was like, if I was giving a salary to somebody, it wasn't even written or documented on a proper kind of receipt book or something. I was taking it on scraps of paper, and I was, just like pinning it together, and then that whole pile of papers would just disappear one day, and then I'd be like, oh my god, but yes, I did give you salary, and I did give payment to that person. And believe it or not, I was also like 7 months pregnant at that time with my 4th child, and it was driving me insane. I just could not, I just was like completely all over the place. And when I used to tell my husband as well that, hello, you should come and help me because I don't know what to do. So he used to be like, haan, main aa jaunga, lekin he never came. And so I think literally in about 3 months time, I decided that I needed to hire an accountant. So it did increase my overall expenditure towards the salon, but I think that was a very wise decision. So whatever scraps of paper I found, I just gave it to him. I said, just do it now, I can't manage it because I have a 1-month-old baby, I just cannot do it. So that's when he, came in and took control of a lot of things, because I feel that the accounts part is very necessary. You really need to be sure of what you're spending, where you're spending, how much you're, what's your income like, and what is your profit, and all of that. So I kind of started getting more involved in the financial aspect of it, and but of course, running the business in itself, I mean, running a salon, the fact that I am dependent on staff, I mean, that's a huge setback at times, because the staff is, our local people coming from uneducated backgrounds. The reasons why they are also working is because they have to work. Again, where the media comes in, कि जी वो बेचारी उसको काम करना ज़रूरी है क्योंकि उसकी माँ बाप काम नहीं कर रहे हैं, या उसका भाई जो है वो शादी करके दूसरे घर में चला गया है. So she is the sole breadwinner, so like she has to work. But I mean, and then at the end of the day, she could be married and her husband is a complete, useless person, and she has 3 children and she has to work, and then there are thousands of problems that she's bringing from the domestic point, she's bringing to the salon, It's like, it's never ending. So it's been very tough, but I'm still trying to, get a grasp of how to manage it best as possible.
I think all of those problems sound so familiar, I think, to most women in this room, especially those who are trying to run a business and trying to balance their family, and that's exactly the question. Before I come to you,
are you talking about the useless husband?
I was trying not to say it, but actually I want to come to you with that question, Momina, that we get asked, women who work, and especially women who run businesses, because it's not a 9-to-5 kind of job, and you know, like she said, you're trying to juggle many hats. They get asked, how do you balance family and work? You know, so sometimes I wonder, is it even possible to have a balance between work-life balance for women? Is it feasible to think that we can have it all?
Well, I would say, you know, here that a mother who's like, I'm a mother of 5, so you'll always be guilty about the balance. But yes, balance is possible. And there are a few things that you have to keep in mind as to how to create the balance. You know, once we become an entrepreneur and once we start working, we have to kind of prove something to everyone, you know, to the mom-in-law, to the husband, to everyone around us, as if we are, you know, we are Hercules or some kind, you know, that we can do everything. And here is, you know, a piece of advice that I learned very late, but for a woman who's an entrepreneur, just put your foot down and ask for help. When you need help, ask for help. Don't say, main ye bhi kar lungi, you know. And if you're tired, you have to say, I'm tired. If you need extra help at home, you have to say, I need extra help at home. Because if you are going to be somebody who would say, oh, I can manage this also, and I can. There was a time, you know, when people used to laugh at me that, you know, you're the best producer in every way because you're producing babies every year also, and you're producing cereals also, and that's actually true because in 10 years I had 5 babies, and like I used to be that one crazy mother, you know. I wanted to feed my kids for 2 years, each one of them, because the doctor would tell me that, you know, that's what's right for the kids. So I would be in a meeting with a multinational client and my maid would be showing me the crying baby from outside the window, you know, that you need to stop and come out and feed this wailing child. So, you know, so yeah, so this balance is tough, but then you need to say it, and you need to, whatever support structure you have, you need to use that. You have to tell your husband that I need your help, and you have to maybe put some of the money that you're earning and not save it all, and like you said, you know, hire an accountant or hire help, or because that's the only way that you can survive. Otherwise you will deplete yourself, and then you would not be able to. And then for me, what I did was, you know, because my mom-in-law is a very dear friend of mine also, you know, we're more like friends than like mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. But there was a time initially when I started working, my kids, like, no matter who I was with in a meeting, and my kids had full access to me. My office was inside my home compound, so they would barge in asking for something like a pencil, or my, you know, stationery has finished, or whatever they needed. They were allowed to come in. And once my mom-in-law said, what kind of a professionalism is this, you know? Sitting with, like in those days I was doing Fair and Lovely, and I was sitting with the brand team, and like, chota bachcha mera andar aaya and said like, Mama, you had promised to take me here or there, and talk to the child, and then I started my meeting again. So, you know, then that's when I told her, I said, that's the only way that I can work. So you have to put your foot down. We are women, we have children, we have home responsibilities, and we cannot work like a man can work like. So we need to design our own system, what works for us. And if we design that, we will be able to work in a better way.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Instead of opting out, or you know, Sheryl Sandberg's book, you know, leaning in. So instead of, and these are the kind of, especially at mid-career, when women feel the pressures of performing in the workplace, instead of, sort of pushing through or being able to, when they're not able to mobilize those support systems, they drop out. And that's why we see more women at the entry-level positions, because as you go up in the leadership hierarchy, you see fewer and fewer women. So let me bring you in, Ali, at this point. And we talked about, support systems and networks. And what is pretty clear is that women can't do this alone. Men and women need to be allies in this chain and in this support, creating those support systems. So my question to you, and it's a difficult one, I know that, is that how can men be better allies for women in this process?
So Aban, is this the idea of you getting back at me, putting me in the position to defend all the men in Pakistan? That's a tough one.
Take one for the team.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to call on some help from the audience later. So really your question is, how can men support women? Let me start with a slightly outrageous idea, which may not be very politically correct. I think it should actually start with women supporting themselves. In this society, the mother, she starts with "Hai mera putter," "Hai mera putter," right? I think what we need to start, women have to start doing more in this country is celebrate daughters, and I think this is very critical. So that's one on the societal aspect. I know it's not a short-term thing; it's quite a long-term thing. It's kind of mind shift of the way we have been structured for centuries and centuries in this particular region, how we have evolved in this particular geography and of our traditions. But I think it's very critical. Right? I think for men, what's very critical is to understand that women are different. They're different, they're not inferior. That's first. Which means they have different needs. Which means you need to structure things in a way which helps them and supports them. I'll just give you an idea. We know that women are doing, in terms of higher education, the attainment of women is much better. But the percentage of employment of women who have actually done a degree program, going into the job market, is relatively low. I mean, look at, for example, Nadia is trained as a dentist. I don't know whether you have worked as a dentist.
Briefly.
Very briefly, right?
Yeah, 6 months, yeah.
Only 6 months. So she worked, I mean, she may have started in kind of a different, in a different domain, but you meet a lot of women who are doctors and engineers and not working as doctors, and they're not working as engineers because the support system is not there. Start with something basic like transportation is not there. The office environment is not there. So I think what men need to understand, especially those who are making decisions, whether within the public sector, within the not-for-profit sector, within the private sector, and this realization is coming more and more, and I think it's also being driven by women, and also it's being driven by some men as well. That at least in this country, with 50% of the population are women. And we always aspire to, when we speak about a growth rate, a GDP growth rate of 7.2%, to create more jobs for more people to get employed. It's not going to happen unless and until women in this country are part and parcel of it. There are sometimes historical events which actually make women enter into the labor force. For example, in the US, the World War II actually was the big driver of the way women got entered into the labor market and job market, because the men had gone on the front. God forbid, I'm not suggesting we should go to war in order to have that kind of a change in this country, but I think we are in a very dire situation, and there is a realization there has to be more women engaged. Now this realization, in fact, Karandaaz is kind of one of the programs which has been set up. And what we try to do internally is, and also the regulations and laws are also being changed continuously, and men are a big part of it. Having more women on the board. I mean, Karandaaz's board is an example. We have 40% women. Having more women in the leadership positions, not having women in just in your company. I mean, we look at, for example, Karandaaz targets. Almost 50% of our senior management team is actually women. Then we look at another indicator: is how many men actually report to women. So these are some of the things that we do internally. We are also, at our end, designing programs. We have a big gender program we are designing with the Gates Foundation. I can't give the details right now, which would be looking at these kind of things. And men are involved in this all the way. And I think, from my personal experience, I must admit, from Karandaaz, having so many women in the senior leadership team, made sure that the environment is more gender friendly. We want to make sure that sometimes we are wearing a suit in the meeting, and one of the directors of the team lead would say, "It's too cold, you need to turn it off." I think it was you, and I had to turn it off, if I remember. So, but the fact is, once you have more women in leadership position in organizations, the cultures change. Then I think there's a big role that has to be played by role models. I mean, 3 of you, and these are the ones who can drive a lot of change in the society by just being their presence, by just being engaged, by actually, they are actually in a position to teach men. So coming back to my point where I started is, you want men to help women, I think you need to start teaching us. And you start teaching us all the way from since we are a child to all the way we are grown up.
Well done. It was difficult. It was what do you say, googly?
It was definitely a curveball, a reverse swing of the mind, but
something of that sort.
I think I've gotten past it.
So I just want, you're all very successful, mashallah, as we say, in your own fields. But one thing which I think is important to talk about is failure, especially when we think about it in the context of entrepreneurs and their journeys. So I want to take this opportunity to ask you whether you have ever faced failure. How did you cope with it? Sidra, maybe starting with you.
Yeah, because I failed 2 businesses, not 1. And not a lot of people know this, that I am an entrepreneur. I was previously there at Ogilvy and Mehta as Vice President Public Relations, so worked extensively with international clients and then decided to start off my own boutique PR agency, the one you've mentioned as well. So Status Pro 360 was a proprietorship. We ran successfully for 3 years, and my biggest problem was not business development. It was being sucked into the administrative side of things, and because we were a small enterprise, a small business, everybody saw me as the face of it. And when you're the founder, you're the CEO, you're responsible for building businesses, which is right, it was okay. But trying to get in that second tier of somebody who could run the operations for me was just not possible. So we didn't have that graduation in the team. We had the immediate team reporting to me, but that was one of the failures. But I think I would kind of want to build up on what Ali has just said. When you talk about failures, or when you talk about finding that support system, especially when it comes to men, I think I've learned a great deal from men as well. And if we have a room full of entrepreneurs or women who want to run their own businesses successfully, I think it's really important to look at how men have that mindset, because look around you, men are more successful at running businesses. There are very few examples of women doing it well. We can change the curve around, but rather than bringing in that emotional baggage, I was kind of wondering about it. Yes, these are the roles we women identify the most with. We'd like to be the best daughter, the best wife, the best sister, the best mother. It's interesting to see that a man never sees himself through those filters. I mean, those are additional filters that you put to yourself, which, just how we're groomed to be. But more importantly, if you look at men who are running their businesses, they would turn around and say, they would very shamelessly tell you that they love success, they love money, they love joy, they love abundance, and they do more of what brings them joy. Whereas for a woman, it doesn't come as a given. I mean, the smallest of examples, pick any woman in this room and compliment her. We don't even know how to accept compliments. Tell a woman, your hair looks great, and you're like, abhi kahan? Ek saal pehle dekhe hote, kitne ghane the mere baal. Ye kapde kitne achhe pehne aapne? Arey, ye to tailor ne kharab kar diya, phir bhi ढंग का है इसलिए पहन लिया. So we don't even know how to accept compliments. So if you really want to succeed, please get into the success mindset to begin with. Tell yourself, I love money.
And yeah, I think we need to shift that. If we want to create a critical mass of women who are leaders, who are role models, we can't do that unless we embrace success. And I think that's absolutely.
Why would you want to dim your light just because somebody else is getting blinded by it? Please hand them some sunglasses and shine on.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
So I know we are running out of time, but I want to pick up on something which has come up again and again, and that's about support systems and creating networks that support women. So Nadia, I want to ask you, you work in a very competitive industry, but it's also an industry where there are a lot of women. Do you see women acting as mentors to, for example, younger models who are entering the industry or young fashion designers? Are there networks of support that are being built in industries like yours where we can create these support systems and provide that buoyancy to young women?
I don't think I'll comment on the modeling aspect because that's not really a business. I mean, that's just a profession basically, which if they're doing it, if they want some guidance, okay, fine, but a business is something like the salon that I'm running or whatever. But in that aspect, I feel that it's kind of getting there. It's not exactly very, very, supportive. Not everybody is supportive. And there aren't too many. In fact, I don't think there are any mentors whatsoever for this kind of a business. So really, I mean, I have learned it only through experience. I've learned it through having been in other salons and seeing from before when I started. Of course, me being a model, I've been to each and every salon, and I've worked in all different kinds of salons with the best and like the ones who were completely unknown. So I kind of knew how the business works and how it should be, what the environment should be, and just generally how, if I would ever have the business, what would it be? But no, I don't think that there has been a lot of mentorship at all in this business particularly. I'm talking only about salons. Because what we have is we have like certain groups where we, for whatever reason, we meet up maybe once in like 2 months. We'll get together for like a high tea or something, but it's more to like discuss problems regarding the salon ki oh acha haan ye staff ka ye issue ho gaya, isko kaise handle kare, some but then a lot of times those issues, and then there is that whole thing about ki we will be united and we are not going to, if one staff has a lot of times so much money is being spent into training your staff. And then of course the staff is just going to leave and go to another salon, because the other salon is paying them like 1,000 rupees more or whatever. So a lot of times there are all these, promises made to each other that hum jo hai na wo kisi aur staff ka jo hai na kisi aur salon ka staff nahi lenge. But at the end of the day, you see that the girls are going around everywhere. They're jumping from one salon to another, and it doesn't matter because I mean nobody is sticking to their promise. So if I today have said, okay, fine, because this person is a friend of mine and I will never hire, a staff which has come from there, but she has hired from my salon. So I'm like, okay, like it's really complicated and it's really difficult. And in fact, that is one of the, I mean, from a business point of view, I think that is a failure. It's not a direct failure, but it's like an indirect kind of a failure. But I don't know. I mean, like, I'm still, trying to figure out what and how to make things better. It's only been 4 years, so I feel I'm still in my infancy stage. Yeah, I mean, in this particular field, there are no mentors, no.
Yeah, I would like to add to that because I have such a different experience to Nadia's experience that I would really want to add something to the mentorship thing. Like for me, mentorship is a state of mind. Like if I am this successful, I think it is because I have got amazing mentors. And my first mentor professionally was my mom-in-law. So that's a very strange mentor for a usual Pakistani woman to have. And you know, adding on to what you said, that it's the moms, how we are raising our children also, that is going to play an extremely big role as to how those guys or those boys are then going to be with their daughters and with their wives. So I had done my MBA and I was a banker, and when I got married, you know, you are into that mindset that okay, fine, now even if I have to leave my job, I leave it, and you know, just be the good wife and the good mother. And one day, you know, 6 months into my marriage, my mom-in-law said to me that, you know, you just can't sit and do nothing with the degree that you have, and just get up and do anything that you can have your hands upon. And all of us, all three of us, like my husband has 2 brothers and their wives and myself, we are all working, and I think my mom-in-law has played an extremely big part for us to be powerful in our houses. And then the legacy continues, because when you're mentoring people, you should not be thinking whether they will leave you. You know, it's a chain. You need to keep mentoring, and I've learned this from my mom-in-law, and now I do it with people who work with me. And alhamdulillah, I personally feel I've given a lot of talent to the industry. They're shining and they make me proud. There's so many people, you know, so many directors, so many writers who started with me, worked with me for 5 years, 6 years, then moved on to bigger opportunities. And when they do good work, I'm still proud of them, because if we are not into the mentorship mindset, then there will be no mentoring. But like personally, I feel that I am a product of good mentoring, and that is what I do to the people that I work with also. And it's an extremely important factor for success.
So I think we are out of time. I have just one last question for all of you, and you can choose to or not respond to it. Are you optimistic about the future of women in Pakistan? Do you think we are heading towards positive change? Sidra?
I think I'm extremely optimistic, and one of the reasons for that is because I feel the women in my country are now finally waking up to the reality of their true power. They're understanding and realizing who they really are. And if you are at any point in time, because this is also a cycle, so if you go through that cycle where you start doubting yourself, I think it's really important to sit down and just answer this very simple question. Who am I and what am I here for? Even right now, if you have a great idea, and I think I never finished upon my failure story. If there's anything I've learned from failure is that there's cycles to everything, and there are loops. Sometimes you make mistakes, and it's really important to have that plug, that knowledge to say that, okay, this is not working, I'm going to pull away. So when something starts to drain you, when you're suddenly feeling that you're being pulled down, it only and only means one thing, that you're putting out more than you're getting back. You're not replenishing yourself. So sit down with yourself if you're ever feeling lost, even if you don't have a mentor, even if everyone in the world thinks you're a failure and has kind of turned against you, you are all that you need at that point. And once you have managed to pull yourself from that low feeling place, from that guilt, that depression, that anxiety, trust me, you're going to start finding people who think like you and who will support you. The moment you fall into that victim trap, that's the end of you. That's when you start thinking that, oh my God, there is no end. So just try to pull yourself out, and each one of us can do it. And more women are doing it. That's why I feel very optimistic about what is going to come ahead. And just one last thought, no matter how great an idea you have and how much business sense it makes, I think what women bring to the table is a lot of conscience and a lot of mindfulness to the practice of business. So make sure that 10% of whatever you're earning, it could be 10 rupees, it could be 10 million bucks, give it back to the community. That could be a mentoring program, that could be facilitating someone, that could be setting up a scholarship, but give back that element of service, even our Deen would tell you that brings barakat. So make sure that you're giving back and it's going to multiply many-fold and come back to you. That's my simplest mantra.
Yeah, I feel definitely that women, there's a huge potential for women to, and you know, we are seeing a massive change in the past couple of years with the help of social media as well. I mean, there are so many young bloggers, YouTubers, there are so many young fitness experts, nutrition experts. I mean, all of these are young women, and they're doing something for themselves, and they are running, be it that it's a small business or whatever, but they're doing it. And I think it's really, really, social media has definitely played a huge part. And then of course, programs like Karandaaz which are supporting women entrepreneurship. I mean, to tell a bit about my own little, you know, stint with Karandaaz, since I didn't know about this till last year, and I found out about this program like in, I think, June, July, and at that time I was planning to expand my business, but I wasn't sure which direction I was going. So but you know, my husband actually sent me the link, and I just checked it out. I said, okay, you know, I don't know what this is, and whether it's even going to be effective, or whether it's even something that is real or not real. So I kind of went through the entire like application, whatever process that was supposed to be submitted, and but it gave me a big, huge encouragement. Even though I didn't apply because I was too late for the deadline, I didn't apply, but you know, just the fact that in the back of my mind, I was like, oh my God, this was not a small ray of hope, this was a huge ray of hope. That okay, if I am not able to bring in the finances from anywhere else, maybe I can apply and you know, I can get successful. So this kind of backing that you have, even if, like I said, I didn't even apply for it, but it was something that gave me huge hope. So I mean, for me, having been run, you know, my business is only 4 years old, but it's, so I know that I need to go a lot further. And of course, for me as well, the issues and the realities are very real, that the finances, where are the finances going to come from? It's not as though I am like saving huge amounts of money from my own business. So it's very encouraging that programs like these are supporting women entrepreneurship, and definitely the future is very bright for overall when you're talking about women in any, you know, workforce.
So one of our sponsors, they have this motto which is called, so they say impatient optimism. So they just don't want to be optimist, but be optimist impatiently. So I was in New York about a month ago, and the Gates Foundation do an annual event which is actually Bill and Melinda Gates Found. Both of them, they come themselves, and this time we had the French president, a lot of women in that particular event. And you know, you see examples from, and they present success stories from across the globe. And this year the theme was Women Entrepreneurship, Empowerment of Women, Financial Inclusion of Women. And you know, you see some of the stories from some of the regions in sub-Saharan Africa, which you know, which are truly kind of inspiring, and you understand, and then you know, start realizing and understanding that you know, we are at a much better trajectory than a lot of other countries. We try to always think कि मारे गए डूब जाना है मुल्क में, खत्म हो गए, कुछ नहीं बचा, कुछ नहीं बना. You know, we listen to all of this negativity all of the time. You know, if you compare Pakistan to some of the countries outside Pakistan, specifically, you know, countries which are way poorer than Pakistan, and you see some of the very, very inspiring examples coming out of it, then you also get inspired that we are probably doing, you know, we are doing very well. What we need to do is start celebrating women more, actually women in business more and more. And you know, Nadia, thank you. You mentioned the application process. Actually, And that's one of the feedbacks we had from women, that you have to really work hard because they are very skeptic about programs. We were successful, and then we had more, and I am hopeful that with your example and people listening to you, more and more will get engaged. By the way, apply next year. I will surely apply next year. And I think we need to celebrate this success. I'll just say another thing in terms of being optimistic. So we do in Karandaaz, we do a lot of social media work, and social media is managed very intensively, and our comms team, Haroon, does some of the brilliant work. And we do a lot of short videos about our success stories. But interestingly, there was one success story which kind of broke all the records of viewership and downloading and sharing, and it was actually of a woman from Balochistan whom we have supported, who is running a restaurant at a truck adda in Quetta, surrounded by men. So that story gave me a lot of hope. And you know, that lady came to a number of events, and she spoke in front of the UK's Home Secretary, who came last month. And she spoke in front of the audience, and she said, you know, this was the first time I was speaking in front of, in English, and in front of the audience. And you know, that was truly inspiring example. So those inspiring examples give me optimism. At the other hand, you know, there are examples which actually make you pessimist. So my final judgment would be, it's a cautioned optimism. I'm not saying entirely optimist, not pessimist, but very cautioned optimism. There are signs, and we'll see where, you know, which way we go over the next decade.
I'm personally very, very optimistic as to the future of women in this country. And women, indeed, you know, is the largest untapped reservoir of talent that we have. The only thing is, we have to overcome fear. And for the women also, you know, I would really want to tell them that, you know, although it's a very unconventional thing to say, but start before you're even ready, because if you're going to overthink and keep thinking that you want to do something but you never start, then it's never going to happen. So just put the fear outside the window, just throw it out. And if you have the passion, if you really believe in something, and you are going to fail, and you might fall down and then you get up again, but until you start, nothing is going to happen, and no one is going to come and start it for you. You have to do it on your own, the start, the first thing.
And with those extremely inspirational words, I'll thank all the guests here today. It was truly a pleasure to engage with you in today's conversation. Thank you very much for your time.